Y'all, welcome to your next milestone, your next deliverable for project number 4. If you've been paying attention, you're following along, you know that project number 4 is really, we're repeating and honing in on the work that we've done from projects number 1 and 2 and injecting the feedback and the user perspective that we took over a few weeks for project number 3. And so think of this project number 4, as a way to hone your craft, hone those skills, push your work to the next level. And tonight for this module, we're going to be doing that with the IA map. So we'll do kind of a recap of some projects, some examples that worked well from projects number 1 and 2, project number 2 here in the next several milestones, IA maps, mood boards, wireframes and prototypes, just to kind of showcase the work of your classmates, especially since we're working in groups. I want to highlight some of the work across the class that has worked well and highlight some of the things that have worked well in those examples, in those projects. So on top of that, we're going to review the assignment for tonight. And so hopefully this just serves as a great recap, gives you some examples, some perspective as you head into your IA maps, specifically for your application designs, because they might be a little bit different in the way you handle your IA maps for that. Let's jump into the first example. So this first example is the Hawthorne Apartments from Cassidy. Few things that I really like about this IA map is the design simplicity. And so it's one thing I would encourage y'all to consider is in these examples of an IA map and even the persona to an extent is less about the kind of the over the top kind of design aspect or the visual itself. It's more about, honing in on and focusing on the content that's included. You're thinking through the main navigation. And so while you can use design elements from your mood board or from your design system, that's not the focal point in this type of deliverable. And I think Cassidy did a nice job of balancing the maybe some of the branded elements of Hawthorne, some of that consistency from a look feel perspective, so that this deliverable feels like it's part of the overall family of all the work that's been done for Hawthorne Apartments. But the focus here isn't about the design itself. It's not about those lines in the background. It's not even about the color selection, although the color palette is a part of what was chosen for the mood board and then ultimately the design system itself. It's more about how the content is laid out and the structure there. I think the navigation is really clear, again, based off those color selections, being able to clearly see my main navigation. The lines are all consistent there, and so there's no flaws in that from an end user perspective, being the viewer or consumer of this. Sometimes if there's little things that are off, if maybe a line doesn't match up correctly, or it's just off slightly, or it's diagonal and it shouldn't be, those types of little kind of craft issues can distract from your work, can distract from what you're trying to communicate. And so I think the clarity of that navigation, the clarity of this layout really helps also. And there's a good depth of content. What I mean by that is not just the content that is in each of these pages, which stayed pretty close to what was asked for from the requirement perspective, but then having specific calls to action on each page. For example, in that floor plans, the studio apartments, thinking through, well, what is the user's expectation when they view that floor plan? They might be enticed to want to schedule a tour, find out more about it, check the availability of that apartment, and then also apply now. And so it'll be important as you move into the application design to think about the different types of pages, the different types of features that you need to include in your products, in your applications, and what content or what actions might be included on those pages in that content that would be helpful to your user. So perhaps if you're doing an entertainment app, if you navigate to a certain piece of content, what types of actions do you want the user to be able to take? Perhaps they want to share it with a friend, favorite it, save it for later, remove it from a watch list or things like that. Different actions. And that's where really the UI inspiration comes into play. That's where taking a look at competitor products, competitor apps like we did a few modules ago, and then taking into consideration that user feedback of what type of information they might want to include or see as a part of this application, and then what actions they might want to take when they're consuming that content on those different pages that they are in as a part of your application. All right, let's go to another example here. So this is James's example from the Golden Door Apartments, which I think turned into the Beckett Apartments there later on. But a few things I thought worked well was the idea of the global navigation. And again, this might be a little different on the when you're considering it from a mobile application design perspective. But instead of maybe global applications, perhaps consider the user profile. What types of information would be included in the user profile that might be maybe global in the top nav there of your product. And so I think highlighting the global actions, the social icons worked well there in this example. And again, I think, like we talked about on Cassidy's example, this isn't about those lines in the background, although they're there, and it makes it feel like it's a part of the overall kind of, design language, the overall kind of types of patterns and design we would see as a part of this overall product. It's not about that. It's about the way this is laid out and the structure of your IA map, and trying to communicate just the ways that a user might navigate on this website. There's a consistent format here, and I think that's even kind of reiterated on the legend itself, where we're kind of seeing that tree structure, how it's going to break down. Now on your IA maps, it might be, for your mobile app, it might be a little different. It might not be that kind of clear-cut structure like it is on a mobile, a apartment complex website. Some of your apps, perhaps the travel tourism app, might have a search functionality, and so you'd have to, you'd want to demonstrate how to do that within your IA map. And so there'd be different pieces of content. You might have to click into that content. So your structure, like in this example with James and showcasing that legend and how it works, might not be as clean cut as it is here in this example. And then the content, the content structure, like I said there, consistent format and content structure. It's very expected when I go into floor plans. I'm seeing gallery, testimonial, studio with a gallery for co-op, a gallery for deluxe. And so just reiterating on the different types of content, the different things that I would expect to see on those individual pages. And so be clear to communicate that on your IA map for your application design itself. All right, maybe a couple more examples. This is Miracle's example of the modern exchange. Some of the things that I like here, again, depth of content. I've said that on a few of these. And so we're going to go into the details of what should be included as a part of your IA map, the minimums, but by no means is that, is that kind of where you should stop or maybe want to stop. We're going to be dealing with a different screen size for mobile applications, and so there's less real estate, so there'll be more screens that we're going to be doing here to kind of showcase the depth of this product. And so I think coming out of this program, coming out of this class, that'll really be a differentiator as a portfolio piece, is showcasing all those different interactions that we're going to put together in InVision that shows the depth of this application design and this application that you're working on here in project number 4. So depth of content on all these examples is really showcased here as well. The IA map layout is really nice. I can almost imagine how this lays out on the actual screen itself, with the Modern Exchange logo in the middle. I have my social media icons on the left, my main actions on the right, and then my primary navigation following underneath. Now, that might not be what was intended, but I can kind of see this as a navigation itself. And again, we've talked about how this isn't, about over-the-top design in this. This is about, in this example, maybe even more so than the other ones, about the content, about the actual information that's on this page. And again, those extra branded elements just help tie it all together. I think Miracle did a really good job of that. And a really clear legend too. There's clean distinction between the colors that are used to indicate what is the primary page, the content on the page, duplicate content is shown well, and then the actions that will be taken themselves here. So I think another good example from project number 2's IA map. All right, let's go into the final one. So I think this is probably the most in-depth example we had from Samantha's example of the Hearthstone Flats. Again, depth of content. I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over again, but this is a great example of that. There's a lot of great content on this site, on this page, and really, I would expect that this is something I would expect to come out of my team, here in a professional setting, in my kind of 9 to 5, and other agencies that I've seen and been a part of. I think this is a really solid example of a very professional, clean, organized IA map that really shows the depth of the content that would be on that page. It really leaves no stone unturned in this example. There's a lot of great pages that are here. The structure within those pages, the example of the footer itself kind of goes the next step for this project in showcasing all the different things that would be included in that footer. I appreciated that. And then connecting the dots also quite literally. And I think as y'all build out your IA maps for your mobile applications, that might be important to include as well. Where is your content linking? Perhaps again, if I go back to maybe an entertainment app, maybe there's recommended, maybe you're on an individual page and there's recommendations for other content. Well, that's kind of a link over to extra types of content, extra types of pages. If you're on, maybe if you have a financing app, maybe you're looking and browsing your kind of net worth and there's an article that pops up about how to increase that. And so that might lead to a different section of the page itself. And so I think Samantha did a good job of saying, hey, when I'm on the gallery page here, I'm actually going to, click on that link and it's going to take me over to the gallery page itself. And those type of little kind of additional things to include on a page like this, on an IA map like this, just help kind of go over the top and go extra communication when it comes to what to expect when the user clicks on certain elements of the page or taps from a IA map for a native app perspective. And again, one of the big things to think about in an IA map is to, how is somebody going to consume this when you're not in the room? And I think this does a good job of not just laying out the IA map, but the depth in which Samantha went to lay this out from including the footer, a really detailed navigation itself, some extra pages that weren't a part of that minimum there that we outlined in project number 2, and then also kind of connecting the dots for us and really navigating us to each individual page of the site based off where we're coming from in those primary actions. So hopefully that was helpful to go over just a few examples that I thought worked well for different reasons, but some things you can kind of pick up on that were consistent as far as depth of content, simplicity of the design, but then also including some of those branded elements as well. And then I think this example is just a really good example of kind of going above and beyond and including a lot of great extra features, extra things that I would expect to come out of kind of a really clean, well-organized IA map here. So hopefully some things to consider then also for the IA map for your mobile application. Again, very similar, will end up being very similar, I'm sure, but some extra things maybe to consider different from a traditional website. You probably have profiles, settings, more you want to display search, favorites and things like that. So you're going to have different pages. And again, that's going to be based off of your user feedback, the way you imagine this app to be and the type of navigation to include within that. So let's go over the instructions for this assignment. So before we actually start our wireframes, again, very similar to what we did for project number 2, you're going to take a moment to think about the pages, the features, the content that you might want to include in your app design and how you might structure your navigation. You can start by sketching things out or organizing your sticky notes, drawing everything on a whiteboard if you have that. But perhaps also maybe consider just writing down and starting with writing down every single page that you would imagine to include in your app. Take a look at similar apps, those apps you included in your UI inspiration, maybe any apps that you heard from a competitor perspective or that were brought up in your user interviews, and see the types of pages that they have in their apps and marry that with your decisions on what you want to include in your final app for project number 4. Once you have that, you can organize those into the different contents and buckets and groups that you might want to include for this project. But I feel like that's always a great place to start. If you're kind of having a moment where you can't just think about, well, how am I going to lay this out? I always typically start with jotting everything down on sticky notes or just writing down in a Word doc every page that I can imagine as being a part of this app, and then organizing it then in Adobe XD or whatever IA mapping software that I'm using. For this assignment though, like we did for project number 2, you're going to be submitting your IA map as a polished deliverable coming out of Adobe XD there. So let's go over the instructions. So first off, like we said, think about the different types of features that you want to include, the different types of content that will be helpful to be included as a part of your app based on that inspiration you've gathered and also the feedback that you've received from your user. And so while in your final prototype, there's going to be a minimum of 10 full screens, and we'll go into why that number's up a little bit there. And once we get into project number, or the final milestone here of wireframes and the ultimate prototype, but we're going to be dealing with smaller screen sizes and more specific actions. And so your screens won't be as detailed as maybe they were for the responsive web and for the apartment complex website. And so we'll do a minimum of 10 full screens in your final prototype. What screens you ultimately end up including will be up to you and the 3 features that you decide to include based on your user feedback. And so now as you lay that out in your IA map, just shoot for a minimum that 10, but the screens that you include are going to be up to you, up to the feedback that you got, up to your decisions on the application that you want to design. And remember, one of those features needs to be what was included in your in the project statement from project number 4. So if you've got a money transferring app, you need to be able to demonstrate the ability to connect an account. Perhaps that's a Facebook account or connecting your Facebook. Perhaps that's connecting a child's account, connecting you to a loved one you want to transfer money to. If you chose a transportation app, which I'm not sure anybody did, you want to demonstrate the ability to search nearby. For travel and tourism app, you want to demonstrate the ability to build a travel plan or build maybe an itinerary or a to-do list within that travel plan, essentially building a plan within that travel app example. And then for the entertainment app, you want to demonstrate the ability to add content to your favorites. So again, the pages you ultimately end up including, a minimum of 10, are up to you. 2 of the 3 features are up to you also. One of them should be what was included in your project number 4 statement. Now, as you lay out your IA map, what would be helpful to me, maybe helpful to your classmates, is to highlight those different features within the IA map. Maybe that's a little star next to it. Maybe it's highlighted with a different color in your legend to highlight, when the user would be able to fulfill that feature, or how they would demonstrate the ability to fulfill that feature. So all app genres should demonstrate then also the ability to log in or create an account. So that's a very important step to think about. There are some things you might want to include on there. Again, take a look at examples on your phone. Take a look at the UI inspiration that you came up with. Take a look at the competitors maybe that your users included in some of your feedback. And so what types of information, actions might be included on those login screens. Definitely include what you feel like is a part of that in your IA map here also. So your IA map, like in project number 2, must include a legend with the content, the actions, pages that are going to be used in your diagram. If pages link between each other, consider connecting the dots, like in Samantha's example. Your IA map should be laid out in Adobe XD, and your draft of that, your submission, should be included in your groups there with 200 to 300 words explaining your thinking behind your IA map for your app and some of the decisions that you made based on that user feedback, based on the information that you got from your user and the features that you plan to include. So that's post number 1. Post number 2 due on Sunday at 11:59 p.m. It's going to be the peer evaluation, the peer feedback. You guys are doing a great job of that. One thing I would encourage you to do with the peer feedback is focus less on critiquing the actual design, the fonts, the color, and imagine yourself clicking or tapping and navigating through the actual app. Do those pages make sense? Are there any pages or subsets of pages that you feel like should be included to create more depth or could be included? So think more about the actual user flow, the actual experience of the IA map, more so than the design, the fonts, the colors. And I'll be looking to make sure y'all are focusing on that in your actual feedback to get some points here for your peer review. So hopefully this was helpful. Again, just want to review some of the things that worked well in project number 2, some of those examples. So hopefully it's helpful to see your peers, see some of their work that was submitted. And again, just to reiterate, your IA maps due Thursday evening, April 15th at 11:59 p.m., followed by that peer feedback due Sunday evening at 11:59 p.m. Make sure you get that in on time and you'll be in great shape. So again, hopefully this was helpful to see some of the work that your peers did, provide a little extra context of what to think about for your IA map for your application. Again, your best friend is going to be going through and looking at those UI examples that you've included inside of your mood board, and then also what competitors or what apps are also in the marketplace that maybe were mentioned on your call, on your interview, in the feedback that you gathered. So look at those apps, see how they handle certain pages, see what type of navigation they include, and maybe take that for inspiration to begin building out your IA map. But looking forward to this and seeing what y'all do for this. I've included a couple extra examples, like I said, of a great case study of kind of all the things that we're doing as a part of this class, really laid out in a great case study that I came across just this past week. And then also some maybe alternative examples of IA maps specific to native applications here. So again, hopefully this is helpful. Looking forward to seeing y'all's IA maps here later this week and reviewing them over the weekend. All right. Thanks, everybody.